I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District. Here, will you do the roll call?
Certainly. Epstein,
Present?
Schroeder. Not here yet.
Right.
Okay, Midatiranda here, Barreau,
Present.
and Dornbrook here.
Okay. Announcements, Eric?
Welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled KMPUD board meeting. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise your hand function.
Okay. Does anyone have any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar?
I would like to move. Let me find the items here. A and B out of the consent calendar.
Okay, so that's the minutes and consent for claims. You have questions on?
Please.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to do is item 9F, the goals and objectives, was not finished in time for the start of the meeting. So I'd like to remove that from the agenda and we'll publish it as soon as it's done.
Okay.
And let the record reflect John Schroeder is now in attendance.
Okay. Remind me, do we need, so that's the corrections to the agenda and consent. We don't need a vote?
No.
I didn't think so. Okay, next item is comments from the audience, an opportunity for the public to address non-agenda items, but no action can be taken.
You have one hand up, Bob.
Okay.
Okay. Hi. Hello.
Hello, go ahead, we can hear you.
Yeah, hi. This is Jerry Glazer, and I'm on the board of Kirkwood Towers. A couple items that I'd like to address to the board. One, I know there is elections coming up for the board in December, but when you click on the link, because I've talked to some people who would like to run, but when you click on the link, it sends you to nowhere land, so it's not clear as to what the procedure is and when the vote's going to be and any of the process. So if somebody could fix that, that would be extremely helpful. The second point that I'd like to address is regarding snow removal. We're not the only HOA to have issues with your snow removal. I've talked to a number of other people who are very concerned about the process and how it's working. And so they would like to see a better process. As I'm sure you're well aware of, we've hired a lawyer to deal with it. We'd prefer not to go down that path. We'd prefer to resolve any issues that may exist between our HOA and the board. And so I just wanted to mention it so that the board can be aware of it. And if anybody wants to reach out to me or other members of our board or other groups within the valley, we're happy to talk to you. We're happy to work with you, but we just want snow removal to be a consistent and fair process. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
A comment regarding your first question about the election. If somebody's interested in running for the board, they need to file papers by August 15th.
No.
No, I think it's today.
Today.
What was today?
Today.
Today by 5 p.m.
Okay. Well,
Well, your website, your website was down. Okay.
you can call the Alpine County
Yeah.
clerk and right.
Yeah, no, I think it should be on the website. I agree. I think the website needs some work, and I hope the communication committee will look into this.
Okay.
And so, the election is in November and not in December.
Right.
November 7, I think.
Okay, thank you. Are there other audience comments?
Bernadette Clavier.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Bernadette Clavier. I'm not sure I can give you my video, but you have my picture. I am the president of the Sentinels West HOA board, recently moved into that position. And since I just heard a comment about snow removal, I wanted to share that we're definitely not to a point of wanting to hire lawyers. We understand how incredibly difficult the past season has been, and we thank you for everything you've done. I think the coming season might be difficult as well, and we hope that we can all get through it in a collaborative spirit. And what we wanted to suggest was more of a approach to communicating to people so that folks can be aware of your work schedule so that they know they can understand whether or not their unit is going to be cleared. So, and that information alone will go a long way to help people know what to do and access or not, come or not, and have a good experience through the season, regardless of the circumstances.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernadette. Okay, any other comments? Okay, and I'm not aware of any written comments that came into the packet. All right, so now move to the adoption of the consent calendar items C and D, which are the receivables and reauthorization of teleconference meetings. Is there a motion to approve that portion of the consent calendar?
I move.
Okay, moved by Bertrand. Second by Doug. Okay, roll call.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Minutaranda.
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornberg, aye.
Okay, moving on to item 8, the separate items, then why don't we start with regular minutes? Bertrand, you had some
Yes,
comments?
so let me move to the page.
Okay.
I want to ask. It's related to the house allocation, housing allocation. So I noticed that I can find the page so we can move at it. It's Tommy. Tommy only received half of it, 240 instead of 480. I still have not found the page, but Baguette, it's suppose it's by alphabetical. So let's see. Yeah. So page. It's a 2 or 13. That's a Boucher thing. I don't see a page number on the PDF of the packet, which would be a nice thing to have, I don't know, in a way. So it's a page 12, I believe.
Page 12 is consent for claims.
Yeah, so if you look at.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about the minutes, because the
Yeah.
minutes were on the minutes is what got.
Say it again?
7A minutes were on minutes. You pulled minutes, not. You pulled minutes, 7A. What, did you have corrections on the minutes? You said.
Oh, okay, you want to do the minutes first, yes.
Yeah, A before B, yeah.
Okay, so I have to go up first, okay. Sorry, I thought I was going back, no, you're right. That's the other way. So for the minute, there are typos, so I think it'd be nice to take the time to remove typos. There is also omissions. It has been brought to my attention that actually the people that were present in the room are not listed. When you see in roll call 2, other present and via Zoom, I think that's only the Zoom people showing up. The people who actually were in the room are not listed.
Right, that's an omission.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then as far as typos, if you go at the very end, and there's a few, but I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you go at at page 916 is adjustment. And I think this is official record, so we need to take the time to remove typo if we can.
Okay,
And I apologize because I tried to do that before the meeting to give feedback to Brittany, but this time I wasn't able to. I usually try to do that.
okay.
Mhm.
With those corrections, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move.
Okay,
Second. Okay, Epstein.
aye,
Schroeder.
Aye.
Minutes, Rhonda. Aye. Perot.
Aye.
Member Guy.
okay. The next item then is consent
It's
for
page
claim.
9.
Page 9?
No, page 12. I'm sorry.
Page 12.
Consent for claims.
Yeah, so I see that there is an August housing credit of 240, and the housing credit typically is 480 for people that live in the valley to help alleviate the cost of utilities and living or living in our wonderful valley. And so my question is why half? And can I get some clarification there?
Tommy is leaving Lava Rock in the middle of this month,
Oh, okay. So that's
so he's there
just-
half the month.
okay. So he will be no longer living in the valley. That's
He will
okay.
no longer be living in Lava Rock. He is looking for other housing in the valley, but he will be out for half of August.
So now I'm confused because I thought that people who are not living in Lava Rock but actually living in the valley also get this housing
They do,
credit.
but he doesn't have I'm not gonna go into his personal issues. This is beyond the pale of your
Okay.
jurisdiction, but just know that he's getting half of the credit because he's in Lava Rock for half of the month.
Okay. That answer my question. And that's the only thing I have related to the
Okay. Is there a motion then to
Consent.
approve the
Yeah.
consent for claims?
I move so.
Okay, a second, please.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Epstein.
aye,
Schroeder.
Aye.
Minutes, Rhonda.
Aye.
Perot.
I
Member Guy.
okay, good. We'll move on to item 9A then, finances, and turn it over to Tommy.
Hello all.
Whoa,
So did the overview as per question. John, I kept that other revenue credits right up top. If anyone has any questions on those, they're trying to break out right there. And again, we'll keep updating that as the year moves forward. But overall, everything's looking pretty good. So I'll just kind of run through the income statement combined, especially looking again at year to date. We are up in budget. Oh, thank you. Nope.
Get him out of order.
I was just gonna
So,
do the overview, but
you wanna do the summer festival review first?
I was going to do the overview. But if and no one has any questions on the overview, we can move straight to the summer festival. That's fine by me. I mean, these numbers are pretty clear, I would think, as listed in the packet. But if anyone has any questions, I can read them
I'm
out.
not seeing any questions, so why don't you go on to the,
Okay. Yeah, the summer festival, which is always exciting, and Rick especially, and that summer festival team really kind of pulled it together and really did a great job. This isn't obviously finalized numbers. This is the preliminaries, but we're pretty close at this point. So looking at it, Rick provided me a lot of this information, but registration, we got 11,400. Donations was a very generous 30,356.63. We did not have a silent auction. So the actual income was 41,766.63. We had costs, which the payroll was about 7,000 at the moment, and other costs were 1,587.43. Which, Eric, do we need to vote on?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. So the
Separate corporation.
proceeds. Yeah. So revenue this year, as noted, and if you scroll down a hair, Eric, you can see the numbers, but the proceeds are 40,000, which, I mean, outside of the COVID years and the calendar year, is pretty typical and better than most. So well done again, that Rick and that summer festival. And the numbers even are just as strong. I mean, we had 494 participants. So that's phenomenal. Any questions on that though?
Nope.
Any questions on any other finances in particular?
Are there any questions on the June financials or July or cash flow? Anybody?
For July. Oh, okay, hold on. I don't
June or
think so.
July, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have July preliminaries,
There's no July preliminaries. The bills went out last Friday.
but they provide the cash flow for the last fiscal year and then the template for this next fiscal year for your review.
Yeah, I have not seen July, but it's not there. Okay, so,
Right.
yeah.
Correct.
So no, I don't have any further question.
Then-
I actually have a question on the cash flow. Our cash reserve used to oscillate between 1 and 2 million. Now we are oscillating between 2 and 3 million in the near future. So I just wonder what is there any explanation why? And should we do anything about it?
Yeah, so the explanation is, you were only looking at those upper lines, the lower line, we haven't put anything in LAIF. And we were waiting till we had paid USDA, and then we need to put money in LAIF, which we haven't done yet. So
Okay.
then that very bottom line of the cash flow, the dark black numbers at the very bottom,
Yeah.
you'll see that increase by about $1 million, and then we'll hold it in LAIF until USDA comes due again, and then it will drop back down to $500,000, and then the cash flow will be adjusted accordingly. We just haven't moved anything
And-
to LAIF.
Yeah, but as I said, in May 23, for example, we are at 3.5. So now we are, and then June 23 was 3, because that was actually a payment of the RUS. And but again, my general impression of the cash flow in the past was a bit lower than what we have now. And I was just wondering. I understand that it fluctuates because we are making big payment on the rice and LAIF and all this stuff. But in general, and I don't necessarily have an objection to it, I just try to understand why are we doing better. I mean, on the other hand, we can see that we had actually a good number for the year. Could be one of the reasons we have some excess, between quote, money in the cash flow.
I think we have a lot of expenses coming up that are budgeted this year.
Okay.
So we've been building reserves slowly.
Yeah, but I would
Wastewater is a great example. That plant got stalled, we've stalled that out 1.5 to 2 years. So we've been building cash reserves on that. So, but I mean,
I agree with you, but I would expect the cash flow that goes all the way to June 24 to reflect all the stuff that you are planning
we don't
to
have the
get out.
wastewater plant in there because we don't have the schedule yet. So I'm not
Okay.
gonna put that, and that's gonna be a big change.
Okay.
But we have our pre-con soon. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay, I'll be monitoring that. So I just try to understand if I can find a pattern here. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on finances?
Sun
Okay,
Meadows
now-
3-4 loan repayment.
Yeah, let's go on now to 9B, the Sun Meadows 3-4.
I know we
Oh, this-
discussed this 2 months ago. I don't know if we need a recap or
I don't know.
the
Maybe
numbers
for
haven't
the
changed.
well, things change actually. At last time, actually, I've made the remark that it's been nice in the staff report to have the sentiment of the relevant committee, in this case, the finance committee. Because I think last time it was already saying review by committee finance. But it didn't say if the committee was, what was the committee's preference?
It did say 2 months ago, the finance committee recommended option 1, and it still says it
Can you show me where?
The second page of
Huh?
on the second page of the.
Under recommendations, which is page 46 of
Okay.
the packet.
Hasn't changed
Yeah,
from last time.
it was delayed last,
Yeah.
last meet, but it was delayed because there's some idea about trying to apply some of this money to the fire department or something, so
So
Uh,
that's basically what.
I don't understand how we would fund the fire department out of this. But that's why it was delayed.
So yeah, the last time we asked for postponement, 2-month postponement on this decision because we wanted to understand what Measure E was going to do, and because we do need to improve the fire services and I mean the financing of the service, and that since both housing and fire department are negative cash flow, and they are depending on tax allocation. Since we have the opportunity actually to make housing self-sufficient for about 3 years, and that would free some fund in the tax allocation that could then be used in the fire department. So I'm not saying we need to take a decision today, because I think we need to understand what we want to do for the fire department funding. But I think it'd be prudent not to make any decision. I know that there is a cost, somewhere it said that cost saving for the district with option 1 would be 33,000. But that's basically if that's for the duration of the loan. If we postpone by a few months until we clarify the fire department funding, that cost is actually much lower. I mean, it's probably going to be a few thousand, not 33,000. So I think we are still in a position where we should delay making a decision on that. And that would be my recommendation. So I would actually would like to see the option 3 being moved and voted upon, so we can take the time to see what are our needs and what are possibilities. If we find that we can cover all our needs in a different fashion with the fire department, then I'll be fine paying off that loan. But in the meantime, I think we should delay for another few months before making a decision. It's not a big cost involved at all. And that's basically my position here. And I can clarify more if people are confused with what I'm saying. I'd be happy to try to do better in my explanation.
Let me understand your explanation. Do you think it is, I'm just trying to think about, like, we've had a large effort to keep all of our programs self-sufficient. And so basically what you're suggesting is this would be a cross subsidy from housing into fire.
No, it's not true. There are 2 departments that are not self-sufficient. It's fire and housing. Okay.
Sure.
So we use tax to basically supplement the missing what's missing.
Sure.
So actually, if you use option 3, you are going to allow housing to be self-sufficient for 2 years about. So that would be going in that direction. But the bottom line is my concern is I don't think we should rush into a decision until we clarify what are we going to do to improve the funding for the fire department so we can actually improve the service we offer to the community. I would agree with you if housing was self-sufficient, that in this case, that'd be fine. But it's actually what we are saying here, we are still going to use tax for to subsidize the housing, which we should. I'm okay with that. But that's where the difference.
I think I understand your point. I would still argue it's whatever.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna use $33,000 more of property tax if you don't pay the note off. So,
Yeah.
so you're gonna use more property tax with option 3 at the end of the day, but it's gonna be spread out over the life of the loan.
Is that how much we're gonna spend on upgrading,
No, I think we budgeted 80 for the upgrade to the fire quarters.
It's actually 34,000 based on your report.
Yeah, but it's gone down since we deferred it.
Okay.
So it's less than that now.
John, do you have any comments from the finance department?
Yeah, the recommendation that we made, we revisited and we made the same recommendation. I don't think, directly or indirectly subsidizing the fires with employee housing makes a lot of sense. And I don't think it's a material amount of money that could have much of an impact on fire anyway. So
I think that's a misrepresentation. We are not subsidizing fire with housing, like Eric just said. We would be
indirectly, that's what you're suggesting. So that is a correct assertion. And
33K of tax per year that would be available for whatever, including fire. So that's what it is. And
well, if you don't pay it off, then you're going to pay $33,000 in interest. So your logic doesn't track. I can tell you really care about this. This isn't, if we want to just sit on our hands and not do anything, make a motion.
okay, I will do that. We have a discussion first. So as I said, we may end up doing this thing. It's just delaying by a few months until we clarify the fire situation, knowing that both rely on tax allocation. It seems to be, it's not actually involving 33K. Maybe in 3 months from now, we'll decide to pay off that loan and that's it. That'll be the end of the story. I'm just saying that until we clarify what we do for the fire and department, I think we should postpone and make sure we don't want to preclude options for what we are going to do for the fire department. No. But I dissent on the fact that you are presenting that as subsidizing the housing, the fire with the housing. Is that be the case if you would move the 108K into the fire department funding? This is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about waiting a few more months so we know what we do for the fire, and then after we can make a decision, knowing that we want to do the best use of our tax allocation. Yeah.
I mean, I think one concern I would have is that I don't know when we're going to have that clarity that I think, and I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying I don't know if we'll have clarity on what we need to spend money on. I'd also say there was just a 501c3 meeting for the fire just a few minutes ago, and they were talking about the amount of money available there. And it seems like if we go forward with this and put it into housing, it keeps it in housing and it gives us $33,000 of saved tax money in the future anyway. So there is a benefit to doing this, getting $33,000. And if there was more money coming from the 501c3 to help us potentially, I mean, that was a comment made at the end of the 501c3 meeting.
All I'm saying is let's postpone another 3 months until we see which decision we are making on the fire. So before we once we pay off that loan, this money is not accessible anymore. And I'm only talking about the 33K that per year that we can save from having the housing being self-sufficient for this using this fund.
Comment from the audience?
Yeah, I have a question about how the housing project for the fire department that's ongoing currently is being paid for. And if this could be an opportunity to save other funds that the fire department needs, not need to rely so much on the 501c3 for funds as was just presented in that previous money. That's not a sustainable path that they're on, and that the goal is to try and save as much of that money as possible right now to buy an engine. So has it been considered to use some of this money to help pay for housing for firefighters?
The fire department fund is paying for the housing improvements.
And is there any reason why this couldn't do that, or it wouldn't be beneficial to save the money in the fire department fund to help pay for stipends rather than housing? And use the housing fund for housing?
I didn't follow that logic. I'm sorry.
Well, you said that currently the money's coming from out of the fire department fund to pay for the housing remodel that's going on for the fire department.
For the living quarters in the fire office.
Yes.
Yes, that is being paid by the fire fund, correct.
Right. Would there be a benefit to using some of this money, the housing money that is part of the district's operations, to help cover that? Instead of pulling money out of the fire department fund, and then not needing to ask for as much money from the 501c3 in the future to help cover stipends and other expenses.
No, it would be a detriment to the district by $34,000. It would hurt the district overall by $34,000. So no, it would not benefit anything.
Can you elaborate?
Because we will have to pay this much interest on the note ultimately at the end of the day if we don't pay off the note, the existing note on Sun Meadows 3-4. If we pay that note off, we save that much in interest payments.
Right.
That all comes out of G&A, which is G&A, fire, employee housing. And those are all funded by property taxes. So at the end of the day, it will cost the district $34,000 more to not pay this off. It will not save anything. It's not, yeah.
So the impact is that we end up having to pay additional interest because it's a loan that you're paying money on, and the interest is accumulating. And the fire department, from what I'm hearing here, if they need more money, they can pull it from the 501c3 and it'll just impact their ability to buy an engine or not buy an engine in the future.
Well, actually, I don't think it's that simple. Actually, it would, it could be actually a loan from the 501c3, which would have interest as well. So, I mean, as I said, let's take the time to see what we are doing before and keep all our options on the table instead of being rash on actually. It's just, it could be a few months before we know exactly how we are going to improve this thing. And to me, that's a common sense thing. I would just want to keep our options open instead of closing that door.
What is our monthly interest payment?
I don't know. Off the
Do you know
top
the
of my head.
interest?
Is it significant or?
The interest is higher.
Yeah.
It's a higher interest rate. I don't know if that's
4.6.
4.6 that's on here.
It's $972 a month. What that is?
4.6.
Yeah.
4.6. If the fire department is borrowing money to 501c3, what kind of interest rate would that be?
Well, it wouldn't be borrowing, it would just be a grant.
It'd be grant.
Yeah.
Okay. So that'd be zero. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I think
that's not necessarily true. That's a decision for the 501c3
right, that's
board.
right. It could be a grant, it could be something else. We don't really know. Well, what we know for certain is we're borrowing money at a high rate. We have an opportunity to pay it down. So there's a net savings if we follow the advice of the fire department, of the finance department. And yes, there's a question of at some point, we'll know what money we need to make the fire department whole. And it's probably more than this amount. I don't know what it'll be, but I don't know how long it'll be until we know the answer and can get moving. That's a discussion for later today that I'm anxious to get to.
I mean, I think for those reasons, I'm comfortable moving with a finance recommendation and going with option 1 at this point. So
Is that a motion?
I would motion option 1 at this point, yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Epstein?
Or is there any further
Oh,
discussion?
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
Epstein?
Aye.
Schroeder?
Aye.
Nitzranda?
Aye.
Burrow?
No.
Robert Guy?
Okay, let's move on then to item 9C, customer water leak credit. Eric, you want to lead us on that?
Sure. So on April 9th, customers remote transmitter stopped transmitting due to a catastrophic failure on the customer side of the meter, which flooded things and stopped it from transmitting. It wasn't really thought much of because winter we have periodic things that stop transmitting due to snow that can last. I think the normal longest we've seen was 10, 12 days. So it wasn't unusual. But when we were able to access it in June, we found that there was a significant leak on the customer side, and to the tune of $50,000 associated with water and $145,000 associated for wastewater. Under the existing regulation, if the homeowner makes the repairs to the water line, they can apply for a leak credit once every 5 years that will waive the wastewater charges since the water did not go into the sewer system. So that is within my purview to grant. And I know that Mr. Keeney is working hard on this and has a contractor out there. In fact, he was out there just a couple of days ago, and it should be repaired either. If it's not today, it's probably going to be early next week. And so he will receive the wastewater credit. However, regulation 62002 has a special circumstance clause relative to water. And this one's unique enough, and to the tune that it hasn't happened since these new regulations were adopted in 2013. This is the first time something like this has happened. So we're not recommending any changes to regulations or operational protocols, but we are recommending that the board consider providing some relief to the customer for the $50,000 bill. Finance reviewed this, and based on staff's input that we generally resolve leaks or notify homeowners within 1 to 2 days. They thought it would be fair that the homeowner pay for 2 days of the water usage out of the total 78, which would be 2/78 of the total, or $1,290.24 instead of $50,319.21. And staff concurs with finance's recommendation.
Have you had any feedback from the homeowner?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Constant contact, been
Okay.
very, and he's on the call right now. Yep, Herb's still there. His son actually has been in constant contact from LA, been very proactive. That's why I'm comfortable that he's going to satisfy the wastewater side. This is just one of those very rare, unfortunate circumstances that can happen. I've never seen one like this myself in all my years of working for water agencies, but it's a biggie. So, yeah, he's constant contact. Frank Wofford is his contractor. He's had him out there, and he's being very proactive. So that's why I think I and the finance committee are comfortable with this recommendation.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a few comments. So there are several sections into this thing. So the first one, let's move it out, clarify, to simplify. There is no doubt that the wastewater usage should be credited. Actually, that water did not reach the sewer plant; it went in the ground. So that's a very simple thing. I think I have no question there. Now, for the water, it's a different issue because it's. We are basically having a rate to provide water based on the cost of operation. So that means this $50,000 of water, it's a real cost. It's what it costs to produce the water that went into the ground. And I'm a bit shocked, actually, that it went for so long, I have to say, because June 26th, there was not much snow at all in this area.
Yes, there was.
Not much. We can dig. If you know you have a problem,
I live right next door. What the hell? It was flooded.
Okay.
It's
If you know,
it's a major water artery.
if you know that you are burning cash by the minute, you better.
Meter didn't work.
Yeah.
It was
So,
our fault.
let me finish.
Let's let him finish
Let me
and then
finish.
ask for your comments.
So what I'm saying is, when it did stop the remote it says somewhere that it
April
stopped
9th.
working April
9th.
9th. So I think, in my opinion, that first there should be a flag somewhere in the computer system of the district to let us know when a remote meter is not working after a specific period. But from April 9 to June 26, that's a very long time not to worry about it. And especially if the level of water. So I think we need to be more proactive, knowing the cost involved here. And so that's my first point is I'm disappointed it took so long to reach it. I'm sorry, June 26 for something that fell April 9. We need to do better. It's a difficult environment. We have snow, but that's the way KMPUD is, and that's what should be done. So now the question is, what do we do? I mean, who is going to pay for this 50K? It's real money. And we just talk about 33K we wanted to save on the thing, and here we just throw 50K in the ground.
It was a failure of the census meter. They should pay technically because their equipment failed.
June 26th.
It failed.
June 26th. That's too long.
It didn't register.
Well, we need to have algorithm that basically flag the staff when things stop. That's why we invested in that system.
Yeah, but it didn't register, and they knew they had a leak somewhere in the valley, but they didn't know where.
So some of these questions were things that we talked about at finance, and I understand that, like, so Eric, maybe can you talk about something? We talked about some of these.
Sure,
about,
we do.
Explain like where the meter was and how it went in the meter.
So the meter isn't in an easily accessible location. It's not at the edge of the road. That's the first problem. So we can't just go in with a backhoe and dig snow out like normal. It's way down that drainage ditch. That's the first problem. We do get a report every day if stuff stops reading or if there's high usage, and we do act on that. During winter, it's not uncommon to have lots of those reports. So the first time they could actually get equipment down to where this meter is located was in June, and that's when they got down there. So we do all those things. This is a very unusual circumstance.
And the meter.
Why don't we have Brandy comment, please?
If I could add,
Yeah, please, Brandy.
We did, the water department they tried to do due diligence. They were out testing chlorine in random streams of water throughout the valley to try to find out where the water was. We investigated multiple potential areas where the leak might have been, but we didn't find it because of this particular swampy area. We just weren't able to get there. But they were aware that we were losing water and trying to find it. It just was a difficult area and a difficult set of circumstances, and that was as soon as we were able to actually identify.
Did you want to hear from Mr. Keeney at all, or
If you'd like to speak, he's welcome.
Herb, do you want to say anything? Oh, there he's saying. Yep, there you go.
What, can you hear me?
Yes,
we
sir, we
can.
gotcha.
The one thing I will say is actually the meter is near the side of the road. The road is not marked right. And this is based on a survey I did. The meter looks like it's bored in from the road, but it's actually not. It is on the side of the road. And so what I would say is you should probably have your own survey done and fix the road correctly. And also get rid of the trees that are impeding access to the meter. There's at least 3 or 4 little trees that are growing that probably block easy access in warm time to that meter. And they should be pulled out. But yes, the line is getting fixed. And it appears that the great snow from this past winter was what basically ruptured the line right at the meter. And so one of the fixes is to get rid of the garden faucet. The idea is that probably the weight of the snow collapsed that downward, and so that's been removed. And so this should not be an issue in the future. And so that's my big thing. It's like, okay, we had a problem occur. What can be done to make sure it's not going to hopefully happen again? And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Herb.
Okay. Is there any other discussion or is there a motion to approve? Do you want a motion to approve the
Yeah.
exception?
Motion to approve?
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All right,
Epstein,
aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Perot,
So we are voting for
the recommendation.
the recommendation, which is 2 days out of 78. And I think I cannot disagree with that. I think to me there was a deficiency from the system that it should not have taken that long. Knowing the cost involved, I think we need to do a better job. So I'm voting yes.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. Move on to 9D, meter shed update. Randy?
All right, so meter sheds continue on. We have had several completed in the last month. We have 2 homes that have passed their deadline that have gotten an extension with an approved plan. John has been working closely with those 2 customers to make sure that they are on track and they're going to get their sheds completed by the Friday before Labor Day. So the summer operations going fine. We do have quite a few looking at this coming up in November. So all of these customers are aware. John has been in contact with them. I don't know that they will all get done by November, but he is trying very hard to make sure they know the deadline is coming. Contractors are out there working and we're doing the best we can to advise them and make sure everybody gets done.
The majority of our are in the medium risk.
They are mostly in the medium risk, correct. Everybody who is in the low risk, which is the one that you can just sign a waiver on, is good through January of 25. So we're past the point where anybody will be able to just sign the waiver. And we are in the actual construction needed process right now. So that's residential. Commercial, we still are working with the few condos that are still needing to do construction. We have 3 that have started to submit plans from an engineer, and then 1 condo association that is working on just installing the standard protection. So all of this continues on. It's the biggest focus that John has, and as you know, it's been our biggest focus for a couple years now. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
I have one. In some sense, it would be nice to know the number of how many people made corrections.
Okay.
Because that's the success indicator or the completion indicator.
Is that 78%?
It is the 78%, but I could certainly give you a number of meters that have been protected.
78%.
It's
the
78% standard BTS.
Or built to standard.
Built to standard.
BTS.
So in the,
Right, but some of those started that way.
As I say, like,
that's true.
is that-
Yeah.
That's true. So how many
Who took
actually
action?
did? Yes.
Who took
If it's not hard to know, I think it'd be kind of good to know how many people have complied and
Yes.
done the hard work. I'm sorry, Bertrand, you
Okay,
had
the
a question?
BTS is valley-wide.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so effectively that'd be interesting information.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I have a question because I don't know if it's 2 months or 3 months ago, you had a similar number, 30 something, medium risk on June 23.
Mhm.
And somehow that shifted to November. And some others actually are, I think they have written with an asterisk September 23. And I just want to understand why this big number jumped from June 23 to November 23.
I will have to look into that and get back to you, Bertrand. I can't recall where we were a couple of months ago, but I'd be happy to. So your question is just the movement that there was a large number in June of
In
23.
June, I would
That's
say, I
been
don't know if it's in the packet of May or I would say probably May. If you look at May, if you have the packet, you'll find that there was this 30 something in June, and suddenly that moved to November.
Okay.
And I just wonder what happened here because I just can't find a rational explanation.
Sure.
Knowing that I've been told that all these various dates, which honestly, in my opinion, are a bit bizarre, are due to the process of mailing people and having them sign up on the thing. But anyway, it's still, we've been working for a long time, so I'm surprised we had such a range of dates, and I'm clearly puzzled on why there was 30 something that jumped from June to November. And I would also try to understand better if there was some kind of a decision made, why some people have been singled out to be actually only extended to September.
As far as there were two homes that submitted a plan. Those were pushed so that we could be comfortable that they were going to get them done before winter, which is why the date was chosen. This is something that's going to keep coming back to you. So I will look into the packet from May or June and see if I can't figure out why the number moved. And I'll put that on my report for next month.
Thank you.
Two questions. One is, how often have we seen success of the meters being built to standard in the winter months, in the sense that, we have November, December, January? Is it more like that's 38 plus 3 by October is the realistic? Is that more realistic? Like, have we had any success over the winter months and haven't seen these built to standard?
Depends on the winter.
Okay.
If I were building mine, I would get it done by October.
The under the deck ones, we've seen
Yeah,
success in winter. We've seen construction in winter for under the deck. Because there's two different standards. So for the under the deck standard, those are easier to construct. You have some shelter already. So we've seen those in early winter, but nothing in late winter.
Right. And if the footings are done, so we've seen them get completed once
Right.
the footings are done. But yes, that's something that John's been communicating also is you never know when it's going to start snowing. It could be the beginning of October.
And then my second question is, I feel like I remember hearing at the last board meeting a comment about the standards as having issues with some of the standards relative to that. I just remember hearing that. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that. And does that mean that our standards are changing for these people? And are we asking the people that have already built to go back and adapt to new standards? Okay, I'm just wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on it and help me understand it.
Yes, so we got the comment at the last board meeting, and it was something staff observed also, that some of the electric sheds had failed over the winter. And we went out and we looked at the ones that we are aware of. We were able to find 3 that had failed over the winter, and noted in each of those cases not to standard construction. So rather than using structural screws or nails, people are using deck screws or drywall screws and that sort of thing. But we did talk to our engineer about this, and he's going to come back with an option for people who have electric meters in a roof shed area if they would like to do more protection with a metal frame or additional bracing. In each of these cases, though, we did see the meter survived, which we're very happy about. Even though the protection, because of the weight of the snow off the roof or of the construction, did not survive, the meter itself survived. So we're actually pretty pleased about that.
So did they get approved as being built to standard, like, because we did not catch some of these things, is what you're saying?
Some of the things get covered up, and if you don't get out there, you try and believe your customers telling you the truth when they say, "Oh, I built it to standard." Well, there's other things that get covered up, or trenches get buried, and
Sure.
you know, you want to give people the benefit of the doubt until they prove they're not trustworthy or using non-licensed contractors or something, then we're going to watch a lot closer. But we have a small department and
Yeah.
there were so many going, so people can hide stuff. And unfortunately that happened.
Okay, so our standard itself, you still feel confident in. It's just that, we didn't see all of them built to that standard and.
Exactly. If you start siding them or putting roofs on them, you can't go back and, I mean, I guess you could. I guess we
Take it
could go
apart.
back and tell the people, I didn't see what connectors you used under here, take it apart. But we had not been doing that. That was just something where we go out, we see the size of it, we can see,
And we
the
do
structure
do
that
progress. We do see
yeah.
progress. I mean, we do it throughout, but we don't have a dedicated inspector 20,
Understood.
8 hours a
Yeah,
day
understood.
looking at these.
Understood.
We could,
Understood.
but it would cost a lot of money.
Understood. I'm just trying to understand, like, yeah, that's.
Sure.
That's the short version.
And we were concerned too. I mean, we wanted to go look at these and make sure that we felt good about it still. And we do feel good about the design. Does it make sense under a roof shed on a winter like that to bulk it up a little? It might not hurt, but we do feel good about it.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, actually, I did find to help your research. In May packet, yeah. In June 23, there was 47. And November 11. November 23, there was 11. And in June, we had only 6 left in June 23. And now we have 3 here. And in November we have 38. So clearly there was a shift happening here, and that happened between May and June.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this? So I'm ready to, why don't we move on then? Yeah. Sorry, sorry.
I have a question about the electric meter shed protections and if putting these protections over them in places where there is a roof shed is really effective, since you could beef them up, but they're protruding further than the meter, and the meters are surviving, but the protections are not necessarily surviving unless they're built and very strongly, which makes sense. But is there really a need for them in places where they're obviously have held up? They are still holding up even when the protections are falling off and not being impacted. And if that's something that's worth revisiting and looking at to see if they're really being impactful in those locations.
I don't know. What I do know is that in years past, we've seen failures of unprotected meters under roof sheds that have survived for years. We saw that out at the inn. We saw it at Animal House. We saw it in multiple places where an unprotected electric meter, which had been there for 50 years, all of a sudden a big winter comes and it's gone. And not having any hindsight here, would these 3 meters have survived the winter? I can't say. I can't say if those meter sheds got torn off during the biggest chunk of snow that fell from the roof that winter or not. Would it be worthwhile for someone who is concerned about that to look into designing their own more narrow protection? That might be a valid possibility and something that the regulation allows. We have no way to go back into each of those storms and really tell when the failure occurred.
Well, actually, we discussed a bit that last meeting where basically there was a bunch of protection failing actually, and you say you would review and come back with insight on that. Do you have any chance to do that?
That's
She
what I was
just did.
saying with
She just did.
the 3
That's
that
basically what you're saying.
that's
So,
exactly. We looked at the 3, and in each of the 3 that we viewed, it wasn't, after the fact, you can see that substandard connections and
They weren't built to
screws
standard.
were used.
they were not actually
They were not
being
actually built to
standards,
standard.
yes.
But
the
that,
standard doesn't have to be revised. That's basically my question.
right,
Yes.
right. But as far as when they failed, I mean, that would be a wonderful piece of information to have. And like, which storm did this fail under? And but we just don't know.
Okay, I'd like to wrap this one up then, and let's move on to the next item, 9E.
Okay, so 90, this was talked about last time, and electricity usage rate surcharge is probably a misnomer. It's more dynamic pricing, which would be on a monthly basis, but to reflect for differences in the actual cost of goods sold versus what the rate study had on a monthly basis. Finance discussed this quite a bit after the board asked finance to consider it. Finance does recommend that we implement a program similar to propane and use the wholesale commodity rate as the basis. But there was a discussion, should we use a band or a range to trigger the adjustment? And if we do, what should that be? They also asked us to solicit a proposal from Shell for hedge pricing as we used prior to 2018. And then once the board kind of gives direction on this, finance will go back and look at the financial implications of whatever the board decides they want to do. Doug, John?
Yeah, this became very apparent when Tommy was doing modeling for the budget process. Depending on what he plugged in as the cost of electricity, we have dramatic effects on that service. And then some of the projections, if we under projected the cost, there were very large losses that caused even cash shortages in future years. So we either have to be conservative and set the price of electricity fairly high, or we could be adjusting on a monthly basis like we do with propane, and then be able to track really closely to the actual cost of goods sold. So it seems like that would be better for our customers and more accurate. And then it's also applied not to the next month, it's applied to the month where the electricity was consumed. So it seems like it's more fair that if, let's say, the cost of electricity spikes in December, that adjustment is made for the December usage for the actual people that consumed the product at that time. So those are my additional comments and what we talked about at the Finance Committee.
And I'll just add a couple of thoughts in here, which I think this can be very complicated. If we wanted to make this complicated, we can make this complicated in the sense of, what problem do we want to solve today versus what do we want to solve in a fuller rate design? Because if we're trying to solve, like, look, it's happened once, because I remember when I was first getting involved in the district, I said, well, I came from the dynamic pricing world, like I did rate design for this for a lot of utilities. And the response was, oh, well, our rates never change. And then lo and behold, here we have 1 month that it doubled. And so
it's more than 1 month.
I'm just saying that 1 month where it's become such a point that we're bringing it up to here. It's always varying, but it's been such a significant amount. So if we're trying to just solve this situation where, once in a while, we can have a large cost that we're trying to make sure that we don't take a huge loss on, we can keep this as just a surcharge on, some amount. Or we could try to move to something that is more like a dynamic pricing rate. I think the challenges with that are that, in some ways, we're not typically a dynamically priced rate is looking at consumption in an hour and billing for the cost of that electricity in that hour and that consumption, which what we're talking about here is more of like a monthly average. And so I do still have questions about like the Shell invoices, like, do we have the ability to even do something like that? Because there is a world in which the price could go ahead, go huge on the day ahead market at the end of a month after a customer in early, say, December has already consumed most of their electricity, but they're going to be paying a higher price that didn't actually exist in December when they actually consume their kilowatt hours. And, when you take all of that into consideration, I mean, in every dynamic pricing rate that I've worked on, there is some sort of communication system where someone can be able to get a response or get a notification that, this is a critical peak pricing day, for example, if you're in PG&E or something like that, where it's like 10 days a summer, you will get a notification in advance. So, I can take action to, if I want, to curtail my demand. And I'm just a little nervous about how we might go about the communication side of this and how we could price this. But again, that's where I'm saying it could get very complicated. And I'm trying to figure out what problem do we want to solve in this conversation? What do we want to push out in terms of offering at least one rate. Maybe we have multiple rates at KMPUD. We could have a flat rate, as John said, and we can have 30 cents a kilowatt hour, which hedges a lot of this risk. And we can have that as one part of our tariff, and another part of our tariff is a more dynamically priced rate. And so there are lots of options that we can consider. And I said, like I'm saying, we could get very complicated on this. I think my biggest concerns are, reflecting the cost to the people who consume it. And if we're going to double the price of their kilowatt hour for a certain time, I would really like that to be able to be communicated in a way that people can change their demand patterns in advance and make a conscious decision, as opposed to the ex post billing and just saying like, oh my gosh, my price per kilowatt hour just doubled. I would have done something. I wouldn't have done laundry or whatever it was. It's hard to make those choices later. And so those are the things I'm thinking about and a little, concerned about in terms of how we approach this or what decisions we make for this.
So first, I'd like some clarification. I should know, but I forgot the exact number. I think it's 30 cents. But over the last year, our average cost of electricity was how much?
Tommy, do you know off the top of your head?
About 15 cents
15 cents.
was the average.
Over the 1.5? Over the year.
0.15
Dollars.
Correct.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so my second question is, what was the maximum on a specific month?
0.30 on December. Like Doug said, double.
So it doubled for that
Double.
1 month.
So that was
Is that
not 1
average-
month, it was even higher than that? I thought that was 1
No.
month, that was even higher.
No.
That was 30 cents, yeah. So the concern I have is a bit similar to what Doug expressed, is part of the problem is we actually put our cost, what so-called avoiding cost, at 13.7 cents. That was, but the problem is it actually fluctuates with the market, and the market is going to fluctuate more, not less, in the future. And that's what happened last year. And you can anticipate similar things in the future. And so the part of the problem is and actually I'm so happy that we have not set our rate to 14.7 cents that we contemplated. That was one of the options we looked at, and we end up at 22 cents. And the problem of predictability is important. And so I think if we are going to fluctuate like that with surcharge, we need to have a method of communicating to the homeowners so they know we are in a high cost period. So to me, the simplest would be to raise the base rate, not the base rate, the usage rate a little bit so we have better buffer. And then we don't have to worry this fancy complex system with communication, people not understanding why suddenly their bill is double and everything. So I think we probably went too far in lowering our rate.
And I would say, Bertrand, I feel like in some sense that is what, like, if we did nothing, that is what we would do, right? Because all of this would be absorbed into like another rate making, and we would have just increased that up to.
But we still need. 22 cents is too close to the bone, I think. That's basically what it is. So I really would be interested in knowing what the hedge pricing proposal, because that would be one way. It might be more expensive, but there'll be less fluctuations if we do that. So that's really critical information we need to have before we actually make a decision here, because maybe that's as simple as that, is take an hedge on your cost, and then you probably have to increase the usage rate a little bit, and then we don't have this fantasy. Yeah.
And what was does someone know, what was I mean, imagine we pay a premium to have that hedge, so.
It was 45 cents a kilowatt hour when we hedged back in
2000, but up till we changed in
Why- that's what a
2018.
premium.
It was a lot. We did not hedge 100%, but But we met with Shell last week. We asked them for updated pricing, so we should have that before the next discussion.
But my guess is it will not be lower
I-
than
I was
45,
saying,
It was.
given 5
It
years
was
forward.
expensive at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So another concern I have is this whole balance between the usage rate and the base fee was very carefully adjusted to try to be minimally impacting on people. And with a system like that, we just put everything out of whack. So basically, the assumption we made on base fee versus usage fees are basically thrown away. And I'm really concerned of that. I also think we need to revise little digression how we handle the demand and the resort high capacity needs. And to me, the best way to handle that would be to start again an electrical rate study.
Harry, you have a comment?
Yeah, in order to try to get a handle on what's been going on as a member of the finance committee, I had asked general manager for copies of the bills from Shell, and he provided those, but it was like no information. But then I asked for the Cal ISO bills that were attachments, and I got those. And normally you get a bill for electricity. It says how many kilowatt hours you've used and how much you're paying per kilowatt hour and how many kilowatts you used and how many dollars per kilowatt. And if there's a power factor correction or time of day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But none of that information has been made available to me. So I feel totally blind in this whole discussion. And I don't know, I would ask general manager to put me in touch with Tommy or Randy or somebody who can kind of walk me through. I would, because I really don't feel like I understand how we're getting charged for electricity. And I really feel that there are a couple of things I'd recommend. First of all, I think we need to review how we purchase electricity and from whom. I'm not sure that we're getting a good deal, period. I've brought up before that I felt there were needs to amend the rates as they were constituted, and it was put off. We can't do this, we'll wait 3 years. We won't do this, we'll wait 3 years. Now we're talking about an amendment to the rates right now. So it looks like when we want to, we can look at amendments, but other times we choose to just kind of, oh, we'll wait 3 years. So I'm totally in favor of having a new rate study. And I would volunteer to be on a subcommittee to start working on that as volunteer, just to try to get our arms around what's going on. The rates that we have now are entirely unfair to the district itself. We are subsidizing the ski area. And so I just think that if we're going to consider some change like this, we should revisit the whole thing, move rates, electric rates up in the schedule, and let's do this right.
How much would a rate study cost? Roughly? Anybody have any?
I mean, the water wastewater last one cost us 60. That was 4 years ago. We wanted to hire a consultant, the subject matter expert. It's going to be a lot more.
The calendar calls for starting on a new rate study in 2024 to be completed in 2025, correct?
For water wastewater, yes. I think electric starts in
Electric's
25 and finishes in 26, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you do this, we're going to be able to track closer to the actual cost of goods sold. If we don't do this, then we probably would have to set a price higher. Just to hedge our own bets. On option 2, the hedge pricing will be extremely expensive because it shifts the risk away from us onto Shell. So it's pretty obvious they're going to charge a premium for that.
Sorry, remind me why Shell is that the only provider or
They're our schedule coordinator, and they're the ones that were recommended by our district council who just does nothing but our electric stuff. So actual subject matter experts. But WAPA, we could do scheduling through WAPA when we switch over to them in 2025, but they were more expensive than Shell.
But we will be getting WAPA power, some amount of WAPA power starting in 2025. So
Correct.
that does flow into the next rate study timeline pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, Howard, like I said, we can make this as complicated as we want to, and it should be a full rate design, and we should, like, I don't disagree with those comments. It's just, and this is what I'm saying, like the invoices, like we've talked about before, it's like, it's just kind of like a number. And so if we're going to do dynamic pricing and we're going to go in that route, which again, I support that as a philosophy, and we can make that available to our customers. Especially you think about EV charging, and there's ways, things like that. There's good reasons, and I don't know if that'll matter that much in our pricing, but who knows? But we can't really do it very well if we don't know some of the details, it seems, right?
We have a schedule coordinator that handles those details for us because we are not experts in the ISO system,
Right.
nor their billing. We had a long conversation with Shell about our board and committee members would like more transparency here, and they gave us some information, but the information is more like every 37.5 minutes, the real-time desk at Shell schedules the next 15-minute increments, and then 5 minutes before that starts, you schedule, and then all of those charges trued up over the whole state of California come back to us in our bills. And that's not something that we have the expertise here in-house to try to manage ourselves or give any more information to our customers. We just don't. That's why we have them as a schedule coordinator. And if we didn't go with Shell as a schedule coordinator, WAPA is an option. Would it be any different? I don't think so.
And so let me ask, sorry, I apologize. I guess, Tommy, in terms of like the number of kilowatt hours at the doubled per kilowatt hour rate, remind me how much dollars we, lost. And then, as Bertrand said, the base rate versus the kilowatt hours, there's a delta there, but part of that delta was, some of that delta, remember, was just like risk, but the rest of that delta was to cover our fixed charges. There is some of that.
20% of the fixed charges.
How much was it?
20%.
20% of that
the
delta.
Fixed charges, it's why it's 22 cents.
Right. Okay. So I guess, will we be, I'm just trying to think of like, how long would it take to recover the lost dollars via the rate as designed today? Essentially, like, do we have enough hedge to basically cover this, or are we like 4 years out? Do you understand the question?
Yeah, I mean,
You're looking cost of goods in December. I don't know
we'd have
those
to go
off the
back
top
to
of
the
my
finance
head.
packet from then. It would have had, or January would have had the cost of goods differential. So we can go back and look at that, but
Because in some ways, like maybe we do nothing, and this is part of what, it's just we did a good enough job designing the rate, and it's going to cover for this hopefully rare event. And then as we go back to a rate study in 2025 and we have this information, we'll be able to go into those details of capacity charges, dynamic pricing, all the things that, how do we do these sorts of things? So that's one way that we could consider this.
Well, how much property tax is allocated to electricity this year?
$450, but it needed $516 to meet our tier ratios in full.
Yeah, so if I just heard a discussion about trying to nickel and dime the housing for $33,000, and you've got $500,000 going into property tax going into electricity, and I'm hearing we don't want to do anything about that. So it's surprising to me.
I'm not saying I don't want to do anything about it. I'm asking the question if our rates will eventually, like, what's the payback to be able to recover this in the current flat rate that we have, I guess. That's what I'm trying to understand.
I think what John was trying to get to is we had to use a lot more property tax than we ever had to because of this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
you got a simple way to resolve it. And
I guess what I would say
doesn't involve a complete rate study and a vote. But if that's not important to the board and you want to just continue to be exposed and have to apply massive amounts of property tax, then don't do this.
I have a few questions myself. One of them is, do we have a mechanism today in the current rate study that we approved in the rate structure we approved after the rate study, if the wholesale commodity rate change? No. Answer is no, correct?
No, I disagree.
So what we are trying to do that is actually, so how can we change, basically have a band like that added without going through an electrical rate study? First question. Second question is, if we do, it's not a question, it's a command. If we do a band, I think we should make it big, so we only tackle the exceptional situations. So we don't have too many of those. Because yes, it poses different people may use the cabin at a different time, and so it's really going to make life difficult for the homeowners. And third, I really think we need to look again at the hedge pricing, what it would do today. I'm expecting with a bigger fluctuation, we see they are going to be even more expensive than they used to be. But at least that's a reference point we need to have so we can balance all these things. And so to me, that's the first things to do is be looking at the hedge pricing proposal.
So
The
I'd
ban,
like
the purpose of the ban would to be reduce the changes. I don't really think it's a great idea, but and I don't think the finance committee had a strong recommendation for that, but we wanted to put it out there as one of the things we discussed. So instead of adjusting at a more granular level, you'd have to get out of range of a band. I actually think that's more confusing. As far as the hedge proposal, yeah, we're going to get a hedge proposal. I think Brandy said that there was a request for that, but to be honest with you, it's going to be exorbitant and we won't end up taking advantage of it. My opinion.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
well, if you can get, it's like you could hope you could get your house insured up there for $1,000 a year too, but it's not going to happen.
All right, I want to try to wrap this up, but Harry, go ahead with your comment and let's wrap up.
Rather than pay a lot of extra money to Shell for hedging, I would rather see just raise our per kilowatt hour rate up a couple cents. That should generate money to recover for this last year. Maybe it'll be enough to cover us for the next year, or do we need some bigger number than a couple cents? But as we get closer to 30 cents, it should be, less chance that we have this problem going forward. And I'm not saying we shouldn't take action now. It just, to me, this is why I think the whole electric rates need to be revisited sooner rather than later. But I think for an interim solution, yeah, I'd agree with John. We need to take some kind of action. We don't want to just let this roll.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was just saying what I was saying is what I'm asking is at 22 cents, are we covered and how long does it take? And if it's not, one option is to go up from 22 and just continue at a flat rate. That's probably the simple, average it out, and it's the simplest way to fix this right now.
Yeah.
Without going through. Again, I listed lots of concerns of I'd like dynamic pricing. I'm a big advocate of it, but I don't want to do it wrong and have people really surprised and really frustrated if they can't take action when they're getting charged $1 a kilowatt hour. So I'd like to better understand the hedging option, what that flat rate is now, what's our payback on it, and how high would we have to go to in order to feel comfortable to hedge this, and then making sure we can change it from 22 to something else now. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's not.
We've already amended the ordinance once since it was adopted, so yes.
Yeah. So just to summarize, I want to move on to the fire department. The things we're going to do, one is, and we'll volunteer Corey's time if we need it, model some possible solutions, just look retroactively and say what would have happened if these things existed, just so we have some data to answer your question. Is there a flat rate that would have covered and how much would it be? Get some more information. Get some more information from Shell, but keep it simple for now, because in my mind, our three big problems are making snow removal a big success this year, dealing with propane to make sure we don't run out, and the fire department. And I'd like to be well ahead on those before we try to tackle dynamic pricing and redo our entire, billing system. Replace the meters that don't. I mean, it's a big deal. It could be wonderful, but it's a big deal. And I would like to know that staff had the time to think about it. And right at the moment, I'd rather have them thinking about our other issues. So if that sounds like a
Eric,
reasonable summary.
Eric, do you think it's a large amount of work to do an adjustment similar to propane?
No, it's not. It takes Chris probably, Tommy weigh in here, probably takes him a couple hours to do that, and then I review
Probably a
it.
day.
How long? A day? Takes him a
Say
day. And then Tommy reviews it, then I review it, and then we sign up on the pricing monthly. So it's not a lot. It's not a ton of work. No. And we
Now, the
already do it for propane.
difference is we get propane fees a lot quicker. We get the actual bills in much more expediently than through Shell, which will lag about 20 days from end.
But we're applying retroactively anyway.
Correct, but it just this holds. You can't do this. You can't do bills till you have these numbers.
Right.
So that's the only thing. If you're adding more on top of billing, I don't want billing to get delayed.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just say too, I mean, I think my comments that I said before still apply to propane, where I feel like we haven't seen the massive fluctuations, but we did almost run out of it. And I would argue that I know that those, you remember, Eric, you said this is more expensive. And we know you said the bobtails or whatever were the, more expensive than the regular deliveries, and we were almost running out. So it's again, that was mismatched from the timing of it was charged.
No, I see that the door, no?
Oh, it's like thunder or something, yeah. But two, like, if someone's going to get charged a lot for propane, having some sort of communication system to say like, hey, this is really expensive now in our adjustments, I think would be a valuable thing to be able to do in a similar way. Like, I think we basically do dynamic pricing lagged a month for propane right now. And I think my sense of it, and you can tell me if I'm wrong though, is that those prices have been relatively stable other than, like, we don't make massive adjustments, but maybe not.
Propane? No, we make massive adjustments.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we make massive adjustments.
It's
Okay, so
But I think we're a little off topic here.
Can
So
we
maybe.
wrap?
Another quick question.
Very quick.
With this trouble that we had with the peak price we had last year, how are T ratios doing? Are we still close to the 5%, or is that going? Because that's some kind of mandate that we had.
That's what Tommy covered, is we got relief from them for a
Yeah.
special circumstance.
Okay.
We did not meet all our tier ratios and no tier ratios.
Yeah.
Tommy
Right.
said that already and last month too, but
Yeah.
if we had to meet all of them, we would have needed an extra 125,000 in property taxes.
So to me, it looks like we should raise the rate to cover this kind of fluctuation because it's
Okay, but
predictable
that's what I
and
said.
easy.
Well, we can model what that might
Yeah,
look like
yeah.
and report back. Okay, I'm gonna close off this one and let's move on to 9G. Resolution 2308, declaring the results of the election.
What are we doing? I know you want to move on, but I don't know what we're doing. Are we going to
The
try
summary,
and figure out what do a dynamic price, dynamic pricing a month later, retroactive. We're getting the Shell thing. Finance is going to review it. Is that what we're doing?
and we're gonna model what it would look like retroactively.
We can, that's something we can easily do on the spreadsheet. We don't need to do anything crazy. So,
Right.
okay.
All right,
Like,
report back on that.
like, what's the ROI on a flat rate of like 30 cents versus
I
25?
can just go back to the rate study and tell you what capital reserves we were building, and
Sure.
you're going to know that right
Yeah.
off the top. I mean, go to the rate study, takes like 5 minutes. So anybody can do that.
So that's what we're doing.
Okay. So and then we'll bring it back to finance. They'll review it and then bring it back to the board.
Yeah.
Does that work, John? Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, it seems like there's a desire not to look at the monthly adjustment. There's a desire to look at just an increase in rate that might give us the coverage. And we want to get the exorbitant number back from Shell on the hedge.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the three things.
All right. Then that's what we'll work on.
Right.
And we'll bring that back to next month finance.
Right. Okay. Resolution 2308. Eric?
This is just a matter required to close out the Measure E election. This is the resolution drafted by bond counsel. And you can also see that County Clerk Teola Tremaine, who's online as well, requested that we do this. So this is just the resolution from bond counsel to basically close out the election and then record the resolution in the 3 counties. So in the future, when title officers are trying to figure out what they owe for things, they'll be able to see that this was closed out and there is no charge. That's really the biggest component of it all. Anything you want to add, Teola, to that?
Hi, thank you, Eric. No, that I just want to take this opportunity to thank KMPUD and all of the voters for entrusting me with their election. I have announcements on the district election, or would you like me to wait until there is public comment?
You came in after public comment, so do you want to just finish this topic and then reopen it real quick so Teola can talk?
That'd be great, sure.
So we'll just finish this one, Teola, and then we'll bring you back to reopen public comment just so you can update us on that.
Perfect.
Don't want to hold you too long. I know it's getting thunder down there yet and rain.
Yes,
Teola?
it is dumping right now.
Okay, good. It's not just us. All right. Thanks, Teola.
Usually you get more water than we do.
Okay.
So the resolution is just a matter
All right.
of closure. That's
So
all it
are
is.
there any questions on the resolution?
I have questions, yes. I see two abandonment of further proceeding for CFD. Is this something that we are obligated to do at this stage, or can we do it later?
They're obligated to do it
We're
now.
obligated now because of the legal processing. If next year we, after all working out the system, we still decide that the CFD would be something we should entertain, we can revive the system
We cannot redo this for a year.
1 year. Okay,
So it would be 2 years out before we could do anything else
yeah,
like this. On a special tax.
yes. If that's, yeah, because that's, to me, there's two things in the CFD. Yes, there is the mapping, like you said, that's recorded, that's still existing.
This resolution will show that recorded CFD was closed and does not exist because of the results of the election.
Okay.
That's what this thing does for the most part.
Okay, any,
That answers my
is
question.
there a motion to approve resolution 2308?
So,
Okay, second.
yes, second.
Okay,
Epstein,
aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Nitzranda, aye, Perot,
I,
Member Kai.
Okay,
Great, thank
Teola,
you.
we're gonna reopen public comments and ask you.
Just if I could briefly, since Brittany's on, Brittany, if you could go ahead and bring that updated resolution in for signature before you leave. Thank you. And then public comments back open, Teola, so it's all yours.
All right, thank you. So today is the final day for the special election, I'm sorry, not special election, utility district election candidacy. And for Kirkwood, we have two positions that will be up for election. And we received 5 candidates so far. We have both incumbents, Doug Mediteranda, Bertrand Proud, and then Frank Pedroncelli, and Flor Dwyer, and Chris Tuger for our candidates. And so Kirkwood will be going to an election in November. And I will work with Amador County to get voter information, and we will have another election.
Okay, thank you very much for the update.
Haven't had that much interest in a while.
That's great.
risky.
Okay. The next item we're moving on to is H, Kirkwood funding next steps. Eric, do you wanna,
No,
you have your name?
my name was not supposed to be on that.
Okay. So who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay, Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got a lot of information from the community from the ballot, and then as we went through the process, and I think that we have an opportunity now, or a duty to think about what that means and how we move forward. And so I would really like us to set up the process and get the community feedback and set up an ad hoc committee if we have to. If it's not through one of our current committees, I'd like to set up an ad hoc committee to start thinking about this and involve community members in a process that brings us together to ask the questions like, do people really understand the current situation? What level of service do people want? What do they expect to have happen when they call 911? Or, how fast do they want to come here? And try to understand the willingness to pay, because at some level, we're at the situation where, we have a volunteer fire department, which I'm really grateful for. But, it's, from what our volunteer chief says, there are challenges getting coverage, and we have lots of times when things are not covered. And I want to make sure that we're thinking about this sustainably, but making sure we're getting the community feedback, because the answer might be that no one wants to have anything other than a volunteer department. And then there's no willingness to pay for things. And then at that point, I don't know what the answer becomes, because, if we have trouble, I don't know what that exactly means, but if that's what the community wants, then that's what the community wants. But I think we need to do more outreach, like surveys, contact customers, make an ad hoc committee of a good subset of the community. I'm personally, I would be volunteering to take on a lot of this responsibility. This is something I personally care about, and was thinking about the other day when my daughter fell off her mountain bike at 7 p.m. on a Friday and was like, I thought she broke her arm, and it was terrifying to me. And I want to know that we can get help sometime. And so I don't know. I want to make sure that we do this right this time. And I think we have to make decisions on, if we're going to pay for something, what's the minimum viable, I've worked in startups, what's the MVP, what's the minimum viable product that we can do to fund right now to figure out what even a longer term solution might even be. So like, what's the smallest thing that we need to stand up and just have those conversations and have people thinking about this and giving us the feedback in more depth, in more detail than I think we were able to, and what I felt like was a rushed feedback process from the community's perspective in some ways. I know we talked about it for a while, but from the community's perspective, I feel like they didn't maybe get a chance to give as much feedback as they wanted. So that's what I would be thinking about as a next step. That's what my proposal would be.
Peter, you have comments?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Doug said, and at least now the community is aware that we have a problem. Whereas I think a lot of them community didn't realize that, because during the Caldor fire, we responded pretty well with that volunteer fireman, and the situation got more extreme in a short period of time. So, I mean, we took what was probably the most expedient way, whereas a Proposition 218 might be more appropriate, but it takes longer. It would take a couple of years, is my understanding. Anything that we want to do is going to take time.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe there's an alternative solution out there somewhere, but at least it was a wake-up call. So, but we need to involve the community more, and because they had a lot of questions about it. Did we have an open-end way to charge them, forever, and that they couldn't control? I think it was one of the biggest drawbacks to the proposal.
And how to fund it, right? Whether it's parking spaces or busable square footage.
Exactly.
Those are all questions that I think we need to explore in more depth and figure out.
And something that Vail has to.
Yeah, we have to get buy-in from our community. They're a big stakeholder.
Definitely, because in the Proposition 218 election, it involves the landowners more than just the registered voters.
Right. Bertrand, your comments, and then John.
I think we have not changed our fire assessment since 1998, if I remember correctly.
Right.
That need to be changed. So whatever happened, we need to change that. So we should start right away on that, make it as expeditious as possible. And we, while working on exactly what we need, how much we need, and I'll be covered. The fire assessment is only going to tackle the fire, not the EMT. Is that correct? Yes. Fire assessment is for the fire emergency, not for emergency.
Primarily, yeah.
I think
the fire assessment funds the fire department and everything they do.
Okay, so that means okay. So yeah, that to me, that's the first things we need to do. Let's get this process going because it takes time, and there are other stuff, but that's going to be more appropriate to discuss later. But yes, involve the community, had a committee to do that. And we need to improve the funding of the fire department. That's an understatement. And we also want to improve the response time and things like that. So, and the volunteer situation, making sure we have enough volunteers and have more incentive. Again, I'm not going to go in specific policies here because that's beyond the scope of what we are doing here. But to me, like I said at the last meeting, we should right away start a committee. And I know a number of persons that would be welcome I mean, obviously we have to define that, but and then the other thing is we should start the 218 process right away. Even not knowing exactly the scope, we can already start the process.
Okay, thanks. John, your comments?
Yeah, I mean, to increase the square footage, assessment I believe requires a 218, and the 218 may decide that square footage is not the right metric. So you have to go through that process. The firm that did Amador County's 218, I've met with a couple times. I think, they might be a good source here that could come in and even provide an overview of the process for the board or for the committee or both. So yeah, I think we should start a committee as soon as possible and try to take action, and definitely more community involvement is required. So I support that. Absolutely.
Okay. Just for my thoughts on it and then open up to the community at large. You know, I think I did everything I could to try to see if we could make Measure E work. And obviously the voters were very strong that was not, it was not what they wanted for whatever reason. I don't know. So I very much appreciate Doug's willingness to step forward. And I think we should create a temporary advisory committee with 2 board members and trying to identify a cross section of community members that would represent overall. So Doug, if you're willing to serve on that, I'm happy to, in my capacity, appoint you as, or either of you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help them. Yeah.
Is that okay with you?
That's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
So if you chaired it and Bertrand, if the 2 of you took responsibility for identifying that, I think the first step, I agree with you, would be to put together a survey as quickly as possible, gather information on the questions that you asked and maybe some others. So we can, in the next, let me say 60 days, get a sense of what the community is willing to support and what they want. And then, John, I also think it'd be really interesting to be brief. I was very impressed with Amador, what they went through and did, and it did pass. So having them, if they're willing, educate us on what it looks like, what they did, what it looks like, what's involved, and set aside some time if we can do that at the earliest.
I met several times with the president of SCI, who's the consultancy, and I would recommend the committee meet with SCI before you do the survey, because you want to put things in the survey that are that could potentially be implemented. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't want to see a survey that said, do you want this all to be on square footage? Because SCA may advise you that that may not be a possible outcome. So I would just suggest meeting with SCI first and getting an overview of the 218 process, how they determine the total amount of benefit received, and what sort of metrics they look at for apportionment of that benefit received. And I think that'll help put together a better survey of things that would be implementable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, we don't want to start asking questions that are unrealistic or wrong or never will work, depending on whatever process we go through. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at some level we will also have to think about, like, where do we have money to pay for? Because, like, you know, John's asking a lot. I mean, I agree with your questions, and I think we can get them to come to our next board meeting or maybe, but like, money to pay them as opposed to just giving us advice pro bono will have to be thought about as well. And so how do we fund that and how do we come about that too? So I just say it as a total agreement, and we'll have to think about how we vet and hire potentially a consultant to help us.
Okay. Let me see if there's any comments from the public on this topic, either on Zoom or in person. And Flora, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I think that I agree that one of the good things that came out of the Measure E process is that the community is now very much aware that there is a problem and that we need to put more attention and resources and focus on this. I think I totally agree. I think the first next step is to create a committee so that we can have board conversations with community members. I think there's going to be more than one survey that needs to go out with different layers and levels of information. I would also really encourage the committee to start by also looking at reviewing our existing systems and seeing how we can improve what we're doing now. And this might be a multi-tiered approach of what are we doing now? How can we improve that in the near term and provide a better service for the community with the resources we have now or with lesser increased resources? And then long-term, what is the long-term goal and how do we get there? And what are the costs and mechanisms to get there? And I think being very careful about crafting those surveys, and the community outreach is going to be important. I also would encourage us to have several volunteer firefighters on the committee and representatives from Vail and other places around the community so we can really get good input from a lot of different people. And I'd be happy to volunteer to be on that committee, both as a homeowner, full-time resident, and volunteer firefighter.
Okay, I see Sandy's hand.
Yes, hi, everyone.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi, I too agree that an advisory committee is a good next step. I feel like the community did become very divided over this issue, and pulling together people from both sides and really reaching out and making a concerted effort to include them, in the committee would really go a long way in building back the trust of the board. And I don't know how far, down the road to go with responsibilities for this committee in terms of, looking at what the firefighters do now and how we can make it better. But I really do feel like this committee needs to get all of the different ideas, pull them all together and then come back to the board with recommendations 1, 2, and 3 or something like that. I do like the idea too of having firefighters and full-time people on the committee. I think that's very important. And of course, Vail. I think Vail needs to have a couple seats at the committee. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Is there any other? I see another one. Hand.
Yeah, hi, this is Jerry Glazer again. If you guys need some help, I'm willing to volunteer my time also. As an extra added plus, my business partner is the retired chief of the Sacramento Fire Department, and he could offer some valuable input and review whatever has come up. He was in charge of hundreds of millions of dollars in budget and 700 employees, and I'm sure I could enlist him to volunteer his time too for free. That's it.
Thank you. Any other?
Sandy.
Okay. I guess my recommendation as a first step is just to understand what the community wants and to do that as the first step, learn what a 218 process looks like, and then take next steps after
Yeah.
that? Because that's what I really want to know. Is the community willing to pay? I know right now we have Rick doing an incredible job, mostly, volunteering. We have volunteers around there, and we have not much coverage. So it seems to me that we need to be able to have more money available. And if we're going to structure things, what does that need? What does that need to look like? So I'd really like to understand that as quickly as possible. But also, you can't have a 30-person committee, or you can.
Yeah,
You're welcome to it, but
Yeah,
you want to be able to work
yes.
thoroughly but completely, but just understand what people want and what
Agreed.
if they understand what's currently here.
Agreed. And then look, I mean, now I echo every comment made about the, diverse populations of community members from different HOAs, condos, houses, firefighters, non-firefighters, people here more or less than other people, whatever the different segments that we have, Vail is a huge partner, all of these sorts of things are something I totally agree with. And I see this as an opportunity to really try to mend some of the wounds that might have been created in some of the discord that we heard, and just make sure that we're coming back together. And, I hope that it goes wildly the other way if we have a vote on this in the future where everyone's on board in advance. And this is something that we're also, very vastly supportive of before we go to a vote. I think that's ultimately what my goal would be for this.
I'd like to make a comment. I agree on getting basically the community input, but I also think there are things the board should start right away, because it's a long process that we are going to go through. I think the 218 process, we know we are going to have to change this fire assessment, so we should start acting on that, even if we don't have the quantities. And then number two is, I think we're pretty thin now on functioning, so it might be wise for the district to hire someone for the fire department, so we have more redundancies that we have now.
I mean, I think that is a conclusion that we might come to.
That's why I disagree with you. I'm seeing my daughter is part of fire department, and so often she's alone on the call. So clearly we don't have the bandwidth that we need today. So I think we should step in to provide some intermediary solution while we take the time to work the solution.
Right. That may be true, but I would count on our fire chief to tell us what we need.
Absolutely.
Not this temporary committee. And so if there's other things we can be doing, knowing about it, the other thing we need to evaluate is if the big question in my mind is it 0 employees or more than 0? If it's more than 0, then we need a structure that can accommodate it. And that is its own process, which Eric and I have looked into a little bit, but haven't finished. So I would hope at the next board meeting, we could learn a little bit more about what it would take to have more than 0 employees, what a 218 process for this would actually look like. And if we had some community feedback by the next board meeting, that would be tremendous, but that may be asking too much in a short time period.
We'll see.
Yes, so definitively going to educate ourselves on the 218 process, try to understand what it takes to.
Absolutely.
Okay, are there any other comments on this topic? Okay, well, let me then move on to item 10, major project updates. Eric.
Maybe. There we go. So no real changes to this from the last time. It's more or less the same. We will be getting the propane pre-design before ops this month. So that can be reviewed and then brought back to the board. So that's on schedule. Everything else more or less stayed the same. I did add.
Did the OGALs get it? Did you get a permission to push that out?
They're extending it for everyone. but we might make it with the old schedule.
Oh,
So
okay.
they extended it for everyone, so I'm not under the gun. But it's possible, depending on how fast fire quarters and fire office goes, whether we'll have staff available to get that done.
Okay.
And obviously weather contingent, of course. So if we have a dry October, we might get further along. And the stuff we ordered from Oregon is now in Las Vegas. So it just went right by us for some reason. Go figure. But I did add for the rate study, do we want to purchase Rex on the Cal ISO meter, not on retail sales, since that was brought up last time. So that's the only really new thing on the schedule.
Okay, any question on the major projects? Okay, general manager's report.
Couple new things that are cybersecurity insurance is a great joy. It takes up a lot of time suddenly. And we're doing a bank switch over. So two-factor authentication is going to be required for all employees. So there are 4 employees currently that do not receive the cell phone stipend because we have to do two-factor authentication through cell phone, which is the only way the bank will do it. We'll be extending that stipend to all employees instead of just operators and key staff. So that will be changing. We have the wastewater treatment plant pre-construction meeting on the 24th. So in 2 weeks. So it'll be here. So it'll be great to get that ball rolling, and we'll issue the notice to proceed after the pre-construction meeting with concurrence from USDA. And the needs assessment, the consultant has made the changes, and I will be meeting with them on Tuesday to get the ball rolling on mailing out those surveys based on the criteria set forth by the board. That's all I have.
Okay, questions for the general manager? We can cover things later too.
Yeah, no, the question I have is, that may be on the discussion part, is snow removal, where do we stand?
I do have the final closeout of June, as you saw in the financials on the packet. It was less. Unfortunately, we assumed such a long-term loan, it didn't have a significant impact on total pricing. And we just got in the snow stake pricing, so that's been entered in. So we should be able to start issuing contracts the next week or so.
Okay, so and for the HOA, you are typically, I mean, previous years we are trying to communicate in August with the HOA. So when do you plan to actually have the price set up and sent?
And then in the next week or two, like I just said, yeah.
Because we didn't see, you typically, previous year you were sending us a table with each HOA and what the final cost would be.
We did that around budget time. We did that.
So percentage, I see actually that was, yes, but that was there was changes happening here, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think we need to revisit that at some point.
Yeah, I was going to ask Derek, maybe if you can go into some detail of like, it seems like we have some customers that we're not going to send a contract to this year that we have in previous years. Can you talk about those deltas and why? Like which contracts are we not sending? Which ones do we have any new customers, or do we have any, what's the delta between last year in terms of our anticipated, at least offered customer base?
Sure. If we want to agendize that, we can do that.
Okay, so we'll get a summary of where we are next.
Everything by the next board, it should be all out and ready and out and done.
Okay, good. Rick, operations report?
Yeah, I got a few things. For the electric side of the business, we were able to complete a tree survey on the Out Valley line and identified several things that need to be addressed, as well as did a general inspection on the line itself. After such a heavy winter, there are clearly some issues that we'll need to take care of, but nothing earth-shattering, which was good. For snow removal, staff is now preparing for winter. Of course, they're making sure all the equipment is going to be up and running for the season. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes that they have to do to prepare for that. The big ticket items are, for example, replacing one of the larger rams on top of the 950. The seal's broken on it, and these things need to be sent out, returned, and it just takes time. But I'm glad to hear after talking with Joe today that he seems to have a good outline on how things should go and the timelines. And he also announced that we're going to probably receive our mid-size blower that we ordered next week. And so once we do, we'll certainly let you know at the next board meeting, and I'll probably put that in a newsletter article as well. The valley is very busy with a lot of construction, and that pulls staff into those operations for inspections for USAs, and also we're repairing from last year's snow removal issues, or large amounts of snow have created issues on some of our infrastructure, so we're still addressing those things. But so far the summer's been going pretty well, and Brandy's doing an excellent job keeping staff on the project list for the summer projects and getting things done. A couple other things. We did have a facility and site inspection by Aqua GPA, our insurance company, for property and liability. The inspector was here yesterday and reviewed some of our operations, talked about some things that could help us. For example, there's a couple of different grants within the insurance company that we might be able to apply for to offset some of the costs. And so Brandy's going to be working with the representative, Robin, to see what we can do with that. And then finally, for fire, I'm going to start bringing back to the board kind of a summary of where we are and some of the statistics that I have on how the fire department's doing. You know, they're after Measure E. We did get an uptick with some new volunteers, and for the month of July, just overall, we had a total of 5 calls. There was a structure fire reported over by Cables Lake, ended up being an outbuilding that caught fire, and perfect timing. It was during our summer festival, so we had a full complement and 2 engines going. It was great. I wish every event was like that. But they all left the summer festival at the same time. But thankfully it wasn't more than just the outbuilding. There were 2 alarm calls, a couple medical calls. For the 62 possible shifts for the month, for the 31 days in July, about 10% of those shifts were not covered by anybody. So unfortunately, that was going to be covered by me remotely. But luckily for the month of July, we had 2 people respond to every call. I can tell you already for the month of August, as Patron alluded to earlier, Ann Fleur went on a call by herself. And so we really, as the fire department, we're collectively trying to avoid that, but it does happen. And I'm noticing that it's still going to be a challenge to get people up here to volunteer on the weekends. But everybody seems to be working really well together and motivated to try to cover the bases as best we can. Unfortunately, there were 13 days in the month of July where the volunteers that were here, because of their skill set, their level of driver's license level, they couldn't drive the Type 1 fire truck. So we're relying on that squad or the brush truck to respond to emergencies. And hopefully that doesn't bite us in the rear end, because the brush truck, the smaller truck, does not carry all the tools the Type 1 truck carries on it. For example, the extrication equipment. So we're taking a chance there by, again, not having certified personnel driving the large fire truck on the highway. And then there were actually several days where we had people signed up to be on call, but because they just don't have the medical certification, there really not much they can do other than to talk on the radio and wait for additional resources to come in. So collectively, me and the 2 new captains that I have, which is Captain Scott Taylor and Joel Gomez, we're going to collectively try to get people trained as quickly as possible, at least in EMS, and then also start focusing on trying to get people able to pump the trucks and be more, I guess, capable on the fire side of things, but certainly not qualified to do very much until we can get them through a formal academy. So again, in summary, we're at 80 calls for the year so far, and I'm very encouraged by the participation of some of the new volunteers, and we'll try to do the best we can with what we have, but it's certainly going to be a challenge, and I'm excited to hear that the special ad hoc committee is going to be created to hopefully take us to the next step or give us a direction toward the future. And that's the end of my report.
Ricky, have you had any interactions with Matt Jones from Vail?
I
Regarding
have
to
not
recruitment?
talked to Matt, but I do know that some of my volunteers who work for Vail have been in contact with him on several occasions since Measure E, the results of Measure E came out. And they're also looking at other incentives that maybe Vail could provide to the volunteer fire department to solicit and retain volunteers. So we'll continue to work with them as much as possible.
Seems like in the short term that might be get the best results. I don't know. So everything else is so long term.
Other questions? Operations report? Okay. There aren't any temporary advisory committee, standing committee reports then. Finance?
I think we covered everything. Seems like most of the agenda are finance recommendations, so we've covered everything.
Okay. And planning?
Did not meet last month. We'll meet next week.
Okay. Operations?
I really don't have anything to add unless you do, Bob.
Nope. And communications?
No.
Okay.
But I think there's a need for us to have a meeting, especially with the Firewise Committee.
Yeah.
Because they're having a work day, and maybe we could help communicate that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. And then personnel did not meet. There's no temporary advisory committee, so there's one, but I assume you have no update.
My update is that we will form a committee here, and I'll try to get a broad scope of community members involved as soon as possible, so that we have some information for September.
Okay, great. Next is general discussion. Is there anything board members want to bring up for clarification?
I would just say, we talked about that gas stipend at the last meeting and just figuring out at some point an agenda item, what that looks like in the longer term, and some of the, what we're talking about with, we have cell phone stipends now going down. Like, there's just lots of stipends that we have. And so just trying to think about, that's fine. I'm just trying to think about what that means in the long term of gas, housing, cell phone. Are we paying enough? Things like that. And is it bundled into their salaries, or is it who gets what? So I just think something to think about. That the gas stipend in particular was a very contentious topic last time. And I want to make sure that we don't leave that, I guess.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, last meeting I was asking that irrigation would be agendized at some point so we can get a status on the usage and also have a discussion on the base fee. So I hope it can be done in a future board meeting. Also,
I just want to make sure I capture that, because that's my mistake for not following up.
Okay.
So the two things, one is just the usage.
It's basically having a status from Brandy numbers. So I want to see what's happening as far as usage, stuff like that. And then the other thing is
so multi-year, looking at how much is used.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the biggest usage is chair 7 or chair 9. I assume you don't want
is what?
Chair 9 for snowmaking. It dwarfs all the usage.
I think it's a different one, no?
It's the irrigation rate.
2 years ago, you did provide a table with numbers, so I think it'd be nice to have that again.
Okay.
I would like to have it yearly. And then the second thing is I would like to discuss the base fee for the irrigation account and the philosophy, and so I'd like the board to have a discussion on that. Yeah. Okay. And I'm a bit concerned we are not making progress on the use of the PGC fund. It's 2 years now that we are collecting money, and we should use that money to fight people moving from propane to electricity or else. And so that's something I think it's not specific to the board, but anyway,
that's the agenda topic for Wednesday. So, I mean,
at some point, I would like also that we have a discussion on housing credit, gas stipend, all basically what is our policy and how do we achieve it to actually incentivize people, and I'm thinking of staff, employees, to actually be able, and how can we help them to be able to live in this valley. And I would also actually extend that to fire volunteers if they reach a specific threshold of volunteering, indeed, not, but that would be one way we could get more volunteers as well, I think. So that would be something that should come as a discussion item at some point. And also, I already mentioned that in the past, that I'm going to do it again, because actually there was no effect on it, is I think we need to have a close look at the environmental impact of the PUD and all of its areas, so to see if we can improve. I mean, we do have the climate crisis, and I think we need to do our share and to be actually, I would love to be at the forefront of that fight if we can. But anyway, before to do that, we need to discuss about it. And that'd be at some point, I don't know when the agenda allow, but and that, so snow removal, we've already had a mention on that. Also, I was wondering if there was any news on the electrical engineering study based on the last discussion we had at last meeting. Did we contacted them, and did we get any feedback from the engineer company?
We sent them the comments and we're waiting additional scope and fee from them.
Yes, okay. So we're waiting for feedback from them. Thank you.
Okay, then we're now gonna move into a closed session. General Manager Annual Performance Review. Wrap up.
We can go back to the conference.
Yeah, we'll go back there and we'll start. Okay, we returned back from the closed session. The action taken there was we've refined the final, not the final, but we've refined the GM objectives as part of his annual review, and those will be reported out at the next board meeting. And other than that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time. Have a great weekend.
You too.